President Trump extends a deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Joining us now with the very latest on the war in Iran is foreign policy analyst Arif Halaby. Arif, good morning, and thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Shelley. Yeah, it's a lot of confusing
a lot
reports,
of confusion.
right?
Let's go through this because this morning we woke up to the news. President posting on Truth Social today, pleased to report that there were talks that were happening. This 48-hour deadline to hit the power plants in Iran was extended to 5 days. And then within an hour, Iran comes back, Islamic regime officials come back and say, nope, there were no talks. They're denying these talks. And we just heard from the president just a few minutes ago details on these talks. So what's happening?
Yeah, it's when you decapitate a regime, it's quite confusing to know who's in leadership and who's in control and who can legally make decisions for the country, who controls the military in a place like Iran is really the cornerstone of decision making. So there's a little bit of that happening, confusion, because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing since communication has been cut off. Also, you have Egypt and Pakistan both negotiating and attempting to put together a plan to keep the region from blowing up. And it's understandable that the president does not want to strike the power centers, and partly because in the end, he expects the regime to change and the Iranian people, who are wonderful, strong, very intelligent folks, to regain power in their country through the leadership of whoever they choose to elect. And the more of the infrastructure that's decimated, the bigger problems they're going to have. And so we're trying to inch our way towards regime change because that's ultimately what they want, especially with Israel in the mix. That's their goal. And at the same time, keep the country's infrastructure intact.
Right. But Arif, who do you believe at this point? Are there talks happening right now between?
Yeah, I do believe. I believe Egypt and Pakistan, who've been involved behind the scenes, do have a connection and an in directly to the leadership. And so the president is probably working through them in addition to having the leadership of Iran. The biggest issue is the generals and the men and women, mostly men, that control the army and the military. Here's why. The Air Force is decimated. It's irrelevant. The leadership is a joke. But the army still has some power. And if there are decentralized positions across the country, you can have one set of the army, let's say in the north, decide that they want to keep fighting, in the south not. So there does need to be some coordination. And the president would for sure make sure that happens before he ceases any ultimatum that he's got on the table.
Arif, let's talk a little bit more about these power plants that President Trump had threatened to attack over the weekend. I know there is tremendous worry about if this is an attack from the actual people in Iran, who many of them were asking for help to begin with. And this is the power, like how they're running their lives. They're already afraid. We've spoken to a few of them, as some of them are able to actually make phone calls and talk. Yes, they want freedom. Yes, they want the end of the regime. But where is that final line going to be drawn?
Yeah, it's very interesting when you open this Pandora's box, as they say, or you start something, you never really know where it's going to end. And this is one of those big examples. Iraq was another one. We continue to compete with the story of Iraq and the historical debacle that Iraq turned out to be. However, there were off-ramps in Iraq many times where the U.S., the Bush administration, and really the Cheney administration could have made a decision to cease operations in Iraq, let it be, and let it control its own internal destination. I think President Trump has learned from that. And in addition to all of that, I think you're going to see something occur that's quite unique. The internal part of Iran, there is no designated leader. The crown prince here in the United States hasn't been there for 50 years. Couldn't point to, directions on a map if he had to. But is claiming himself to be the de facto leader. Maybe that's something that the people will decide ultimately, but there does need to be somebody who sticks their head up and says, hey, I am the new leader, negotiate with me as the regime is changing. I don't see that yet, and I think that's what President Trump might be waiting for.
Yeah, I may disagree based on what we've heard from many people. He probably could point to many cities in there. And this is the one name that we've actually heard from the people inside of Iran, and the protests that started a few months ago was his name to return there.
Yeah, he began a very big PR campaign with his friends on the ground. So it's hard to believe how much of it is organic and how much of it is paid for. However, if it's the only answer, I'm willing to accept it. If it's the answer that is bought and paid for because he's the only one that has the courage to stand up. There's been countless attempts on his life here in the United States and other places when he's traveled from the Iranian government. So he does have a level of courage and he does have a level of resilience. I think ultimately he doesn't seem to have the world respect. That's kind of what we're seeing. And President Trump sees that behind the scenes when he speaks to leaders. The challenge you're going to have is Europe needs to get behind this. It's much more important to them because the energy comes from Iran to feed that part of the world. And if they don't step up, which they're afraid, look, the top 10 cities in England are controlled by Muslim mayors. Now you can say that's good or bad or it doesn't matter. It does matter because Great Britain is afraid to stick its head up and defend the United States and defend NATO because it's worried about internal domestic issues. Rightfully so. If you have enough people to vote for the largest cities' mayors to be different than Great Britain, normal citizens, if you will, from 20, 50, 100 years ago, you start to see this Muslim move. Now, it might be good or bad. That's not my point. My point is you're not going to fight the same people that are in your group. Now, the biggest challenge is this, Shali, think about it. You have Sunni and you have Shia Muslims fighting against each other. It has always been that way. And the Shia Muslims want an Armageddon. They want an end to the world. They think this is what's going to bring the 12th Imam back, is chaos. So they're not the same as the folks in Cuba or even Bashir Assad in Syria. They're a bit more pragmatic. They look around and say, it's time for us to leave, or let's take our 10 million or 100 million and leave. The leadership in Iran, the Khamenei, the last leader, the spiritual leader, is worth reportedly $95 billion. 95 billion. That's enough money to do almost anything and go almost to anywhere, and yet they still stay in place to fight to the death. So there's a little bit of logic that's missing there at the seam.
If we go to the 5 days, 2 days now extended to 5 days, what do you see happening over the next week?
I think internally there's going to be a bit of a civil war. It may be quick, it may be decisive, and I believe that's ultimately what's going to take place. I'm hopeful that enough of the Iranian leadership, because there are two different groups. There's the IRGC, and they're the radical, quite involved in government, right? They really step up and push people around. They're the ones that kill people on the streets. They're the ones that invoke these crazy Sharia laws. But you also have the rest of the military. You have other men and women who are career military officers who believe in the mission just as long as it's paying their bills, but they're not the fanatics. So I think that fanatical world is going to fight with the more pragmatic world. And until that comes to a resolution, it's going to be difficult to know who to negotiate with. President Trump is working with the people that I believe Israel has identified as the ones that hold power. Now, remember this, Israel has had quite a few internal spies and folks inside of the Iranian government. That's how they knew where everybody was all of the time, because these men that were spies, and maybe even some women, worked for the Israeli government. And because the Persian Jewish community is so thick and so heavy all around the world, you can drop them back in to Iran and they blend in perfectly with no accent, nothing. And so I think there's a little bit of that happening, and maybe some internal strife that can be led by the new, more pragmatic regime.
A foreign policy analyst, Arif Halaby, we appreciate your time here. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Thank you.